had to get used to cooking the whole animal, cooking different cuts of meat, and then also being able to use the organ meat, just getting comfortable with it. Ancestrally, like our ancestors wasted nothing. And you are taking a life. I think we have that disconnect between the animal and what we're eating. And so we need to get comfortable with eating the entire animal. If we are going to take that life and put it, it's going to be in our freezer, we're going to be using it, we have to get comfortable with using all of the animal.
Welcome to the Paintbrush Prairie podcast. I'm Kinsey Ashcraft, a boutique owner, firefighter wife, and mama of 2 cowgirls, homesteading on a cattle ranch in Oklahoma.
And I'm Talia Watcott, a Western artist and illustrator, mama of 2, and wife of a mountain man, raising babies in the mountains of Utah.
Together, we share a passion for the Western lifestyle, homemaking, and Indian paintbrush flowers.
We're here to inspire and encourage you as we each create a simple but beautiful life on the prairie. Welcome to another episode of the Paintbrush Prairie podcast. We are so excited because today we have a really awesome guest. We have Sarah Stutzman of Well Folk Revival with us today, and she is going to share with us some really, really fun information and some nuggets of wisdom, and I can't wait. So a little bit about Sarah. She is a wife, a mother, and a homestead educator. And she's also a former school teacher. Sarah and her husband live on a homestead in Pennsylvania where they raise their children, grow their own food, care for their animals, and practice functional medicine. Sarah enjoys teaching her community about ancestral roots through her folk school and holistic health coaching. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Hi, Talia and Kenzie. Thanks for having me.
We are so excited.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how you grew up, and was agriculture part of your life growing up, or is that something that you've gotten into a little bit later in life?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like it's going to be a long question, so I'll try to make it as short as possible. So agriculture was part of my life growing up for a little part of my life. My parents, we moved to a Christmas tree farm when I was about 5. My great uncle purchased a Christmas tree farm and renovated the barn. And my parents kind of took over and we trimmed trees. We took care of, my parents, I say we, I was like 5. So they took care of the farm, and it was a magical childhood because I don't know, there was ponds, I could ride my bike anywhere. And then my uncle, it was actually my 2 great uncles, they got into exotic animals and started purchasing elk and zebras and camels and fainting goats. Have you ever seen a fainting goat?
Yes.
Okay. As a 5-year-old, I was like, these are the coolest things. I would chase them around and try to make them faint. And so I grew up there until I was I think I was 10, and we moved off the farm. It was just a lot because my mom, my sister and I are 7 years apart. So my mom just had a baby, and it was just a lot. She managed all the people that came in to trim trees and work on the farm. And my dad worked full time, actually full time, because my mom stayed home with us. And so it was just a lot, or we would have stayed there probably forever. She said, we were just talking about that. And so then we moved into a development, and then I had friends to play with. So I had the best of both worlds, but I think that just spurred something in me. I just always dreamt of marrying a blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy, having a farm and children and all the animals and stuff. And so I always desired that growing up. And then my dad let me have a little patch of, just a little tiny piece of the backyard to have a garden while I was was I in high school or college? Because I commuted to college for a little while. And that just, so it's always been a part of who I am. I think that's just God weaves who you are. I don't think, but I know God weaves that in you. And you have children, you both have children, and you see that. And you both homeschool, you said,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's like the coolest thing about homeschool, that you can see their gifts and their talents, and you can pull that out, and you can just really work with them in who they're going to become one day. It's so much different than public school, where it's just everything is tests and standards and all of that. And so you can really develop that in them because it is who they're going to be one day. So, yeah.
That's so fun. It sounds like you had such a very diverse childhood as far as like just seeing like all the way from the agricultural aspect to the suburban type environment. But I do agree. I think that there is something that happens when kids are young and you introduce them to an agricultural lifestyle when they're young, and it like sticks with you. Because I was the same way. I always lived in the suburbs, but I had experiences, like on different relatives' ranches or with animals, and I was obsessed forever.
Yeah.
And it hasn't left me.
Yeah, like seeing an animal being born and feeding them and caring for them, that does not leave you. And making mud pies and playing in the dirt, like, yeah, there's nothing better than just farm life.
That's awesome.
So how did you get started in homesteading? So if you want to add this to this other question, like tell us about your actual homestead with your husband and what your family life is like.
Yeah. So like I said, it was always part of just who I am, like having the garden. And then when I met my husband, I was 26. I think we met later. I would say later in life. I feel like I just always dreamt of like, graduating college and getting married right away and having a family. And it just didn't happen. But we met, and his background, his grandfather was an organic farmer. So when I say my husband's from Idaho, his family side is from Idaho and his mom's side is from Pennsylvania. And so they moved back to Pennsylvania when he was younger to take care of his grandmother when she was passing away. And so he just learned to like work on the farm at like such a young age and drive the tractors and help his grandfather on the farm. So that just was woven into him. And so naturally we got married, and we actually lived on his grandfather's organic farm. When his grandfather had passed away, it was sold, and it was like the farmhouse burnt down, but he built like a modular home like a rancher on the property, and it was for rent when we were engaged. And so he moved in there, and then as soon as like we got married, we just dove right in. I mean, like we didn't just dip our toe in. We got the meat birds, we got the laying hens, we got hogs that we kept over at his parents' house. We got a Holstein steer. What else do we have? I mean, he had horses because he hunts. And so we had the horses, and then we had a baby. And so I was like, and we had a huge garden, and our garden that first summer was all weeds. It was just, we had to like mow down the beets just to get to the beets. But we had so much fun. There was so much joy in it. And so that was, we're going to be married. Oh gosh, I should know this. 17 years. So that was like 16 years ago. We got married in October, and then that spring we immediately dove in. And I think it just started because it was both woven into us, but we watched the movie Food Inc. Did you ever see the movie Food Inc? It was like, one of the first like documentaries or whatever, and Joel Salatin is in there, and Joel Salatin is from Polyface Farm, and he's a regenerative farmer. And so we were like, oh yeah, let's start raising our food. Like, I can't believe what's in all of our food. So we just dove in. And then we purchased this farm that we're on right now because we rented the first 5 years. And now we've been here so we must have rented like maybe 6 years. So we've been here about 10, 11 years. And so we have 3.5 acres here in Pennsylvania, which finding land in Pennsylvania and finding like where we are is, I mean, farms go for millions and millions of dollars because it's all like it stays in the family lineage, like the Amish, the Mennonite. And so it's so difficult to find even just like 3 acres. But family life here now. Like, I just feel like we're always starting a new garden. The whole goal is to mow less, grow more food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then I'm like, then that means more weeds. So
Yes.
Right? There's always like a downside to everything.
Yeah. So we pack it out here on our farm. So I was just looking, we have 2 dairy cows. I'm sorry. We have 1 dairy cow and 2 heifers and then 2 bull calves. Actually, they're steers now. So, and I was like, how do we have 5 cows on 3.5 acres? Like, how do we get here? Like, it's usually chicken math, right? And I'm like, I don't know. So our children my oldest is 15 and our middle child is 12 and our youngest is going to be 10 next week. And so this is all they've known, and they've grown up with animals and, just like, Kenzie, I don't know, did you grow up on a farm or like with animals and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So, it's like woven into you, right? And
yes.
yeah. And now they take it on. And so they do all the feeding, they do everything. And so my oldest is in 4-H and I always wanted a dairy cow. And so I got the dairy cow for my birthday, my 40th birthday, and my daughter took it over. Like she took it over.
Oh.
And so now it's like, now she shows her dairy cows and she's going to show dairy beef. So I was like, my hay bill is really expensive because, we don't have the land. We have a horse, we have laying hens. We just got our meat birds. We usually raise 2 hogs. I don't know. That's always controversial back and forth. Like not controversial, but it's always like, do we not? Because I don't know, pork isn't good for you, but I love the bacon and I love having, like the variety in the freezer.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then, just gardens. And I think my favorite is our greenhouse. That just keeps me like just emotionally stable through the winter time because
yes.
Like
that is on my wish list.
Yes. I think it's cheaper than therapy because, you can go up there like December and January are kind of still cold and there's really nothing growing. But once February hits, we're up there and like during the day, it'll get maybe like 60 on like just a cold day. But on a warm day, if it's 50 outside, it's like 80 to 100 degrees in here.
Oh my gosh.
So nice.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you guys make the most of your land, like how you figured out how to pack it in and utilize almost every square foot of it. So that's really interesting to me. And I love that your kids are in 4-H too. Ours are as well. So we really enjoy that.
Yeah.
Were you ever in 4-H?
No.
Okay.
No. I just because I then moved, we moved into the suburbs and it was just the normal like sports and all of that.
Yeah.
So we didn't have animals, obviously. Yeah. I actually had to push her into it. She's very, she's coming out of her shell. And so I love to see her just growing and just taking wing and she loves it now. And I love going to the meetings too, because I learned so much, and it's just a great group of people.
Well, what I love about 4-H too is, I don't know about where you're from, but our county club does such a good job of incorporating so many different areas and subjects. So if there are families who live in the suburbs, they can still be in 4-H and they can do like home economics, whether that's like sewing or they can be in public speaking or all of these other facets. So that's one thing I love about 4-H is you can still get that homesteading aspect, even if you're not like able to live that life right then. And your kids can be exposed to so many different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I always like wish that I had done 4-H. When I got to high school, I did FFA. So I was able to have animals that way because I seriously was just like, I'm just gonna join. Like my mom was not her idea or anything. I was just like, well, I'm just gonna do it. But I'm excited for my kids to get to like the 4-H age so that they can be a part of it. And hopefully by then we'll actually have our real homestead.
Okay.
We're still like in the suburbs, but we're gonna get out there. But it's similar to like what you were saying about finding land. Similar problem here. It's very expensive.
I love Utah. Like, what part of Utah are you in?
So I am just right by Provo, if you know where that is.
Mm-hmm.
So just about 20 minutes away from Provo.
It's beautiful. It's like wide open.
Yeah.
And you can still get to the city like hour and a half?
Well, actually, so where I'm at, we're basically the city. It's just we're about 45 minutes south of Salt Lake. But the way that it's grown now, it's kind of just all one big giant city.
Okay.
There's no breaks in between. It's just all like one big thing. It's just like Salt Lake is much more like what you would say urban, I guess. And then like pretty much my whole valley is just suburbs. It's just like a blanket of suburbs.
Okay.
So anyway, but if you drive, like if you drive a half an hour away, like up to Heber or down south, like an hour, then it gets really rural. It's just like these two valleys are like right next to each other, and they're really very, very heavily populated. So
yeah,
and it's not slowing down. So that's why I'm like, I want to get out.
Yeah. I think that goes back to like, be faithful with the little that you've been given. And I feel like, we have 3.5 acres and it's, I would love more, not just for me, because I see my children growing and expanding. And I would love more for them, to be able just to take root in all of this. And I'm like, okay, we got to be faithful with the little and really just enjoy what we have and be grateful for it and use every part of it,
Right. Yeah. Well, and I do think it is a good point to make, like, because I'm sure you felt in your life where you're like, man, I wish that this wasn't where I was at, like I wish I was somewhere else or had a different situation or something. And it can be like that, especially when you're longing for land and like the homestead that you really are dreaming of and have for so many years. But you can incorporate a lot of the skills and lifestyle elements of a homestead, even if you don't live on a lot of acreage, which is actually, it kind of leads into our next question. Kind of. We're going to get there. But so I want to kind of go into how you started getting into the holistic self-sufficiency kind of angle. Because there's a lot of different types of homesteads, but I feel like you're very much on like just eating as clean as we can, growing our own food, growing it sustainably and in a clean way. So how did you transition from just like, okay, here we are, we have our homestead, we're like buying all the animals and we're, doing all the things, having the garden. How did you kind of lean into like the more like health conscious side of it?
Let me think. Because we were, buying all the animals and we had, we were raising our own food at the garden. I was canning everything. And there was so much I wasted because that's just part of the learning process, right? Of just like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I didn't grow up canning. My mom I think we made strawberry jam with she canned with paraffin wax instead of, water bath canner. And that was basically it. We froze beans and corn and stuff that we would get from the farmer. But yeah, as far as the more holistic and leaning into whole foods and eating what we grow, that just developed. The more we became more conscious of what was being put in our food, because here in where we live, we have what's called like dense and bend stores or discount stores that are owned by like Amish or Mennonite. And you can go and you can get like mac and cheese for 75 cents a box, like Annie's, like organic mac and cheese, like all those. I was, having a baby, starting to raise a family. I've always been conscious growing up because I was that chubby kid that like, I don't know. I was just that chubby kid that, I struggled growing up until I was in sports and stuff. And so I've always been conscious of health and following diet culture, right? From little on up. And so I thought the next step for us was buying organic, right? Organic mac and cheese and the organic granola bars and all those things all the little snacky things that I would feed my children. And there's nothing wrong with that if you're on occasion, right? And do we eat those
Right.
things sometimes? Yeah, like road trips or if we're going to the cabin or something. But I really had to start weeding that out because I noticed my children's behavior when they would eat, even if it was organic crackers or the mac and cheese or whatever we had in the house, they would eat it, they would devour it in a second and then
Mm-hmm.
one more. And I was like, okay, there's something in here that's not right. And so we just started going to more like whole foods cooking, getting rid of the snacks. Like, do we really need the snacks?
Mm-hmm.
But now they're old enough, they bake and they're like, can we make peanut butter cookies? And I was like, okay, you can't deny that stuff. Right. And I'm like, if we're using, einkorn flour and the sucanat sugar and organic peanut butter, then, it's better than what we would buy packaged because it doesn't have all those preservatives in.
Mm-hmm.
And just those hidden flavorings, even though they say natural. My children
Yes.
know, like they'll read the box and they're like, oh, natural flavoring. Well, they can put anything in there. Like, and it's just
Yeah.
to hear them say that, even though they will have no problem eating it, they will totally eat that. They know. And so I think it's going to stick with them. And we're all human. And yeah. So as far as that, I think it was just a slow process. I mean, we started homesteading, like 16 years ago and started just being conscious. And so I don't feel like we've come to this place where like we have it all together. I still love Hellman's mayonnaise. And yes, I could make my own, but like, I don't know, there's just certain things that's like, okay, I'm going to cut this
Right.
out, but these are the non-negotiables.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And just being more reliant on, because I think it's more my husband, where if I do buy something at the grocery store, he's like, well, what about the food we grow? So why are we growing it? And I was like, okay, I just have to be a little bit more respectful of just his time that he puts into it too. And my
Right.
time, it's not just fun and games. This is actually, yeah, we're growing our own food. Yeah. So,
Right.
um, I think for us, it was even just that transition from the medical world too, like where we would always go to the doctor for well checkups. Um, and then when we had some health things going on with my youngest daughter, that weren't working,
Mm-hmm.
going to the medical doctor, transitioning into seeing a holistic doctor. Like I really had to gain that confidence. And I think it's very similar to whole foods cooking
Mm-hmm.
and trying new recipes. It's just that, yeah, just gaining confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I feel like I can understand where you're coming from. And I think like, especially when you're talking about like having the confidence, sometimes it can be really hard, especially if no one around you, like in your close circles, like if they don't eat that way. Sometimes it's like you feel like you have like 10 eyeballs when you like talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think it's good. And that's one thing I do love about like accounts like yours and the way that people are starting to share more on social media, like these different ways of like improving your health and eating healthier and it's just becoming more of a thing, so more people can eat that way and ultimately be healthier. But then also, if you want to be that way, it kind of gives you confidence, even if no one in your personal life eats that way. Like you're like, well, I trust these people like on social media or whatever, and or I really admire how they're doing things. And like I love your account. I admire how you do everything. So
Thank you.
it's just like it's cool because like not only are you learning from people, but it builds your confidence to try that stuff. So
Yeah. And I say that, like, because there are many people talking about it, which is awesome. But then there's, so many people that sometimes it's like, well, can I do it as well as she does? Or, what if I make a mistake? And so to that, I say, just get in there and do it.
yeah.
Like, I don't know, when we started, there was no, like, I think it was blogs and Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I followed a few people, but we just did it and we made so many mistakes. And I think I just really don't like the diet culture and just trying to break up with diet culture and just eat real food.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, just eat real food, people.
Yeah.
And that's like fruits and vegetables and meat.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like in our culture, kind of just like over time and with, the development and I don't know how you want to say it, the expansion and evolution of like food science, like there are always like good things, but there's also a lot of not good things. And so like over time, all of these developments have happened and you kind of have to like sort through all of that, and it's like really find like what is actually the good stuff. And it's usually going back to like before, like more of how people ate like in the 1800s, and kind of like, getting away from like the processed foods and the margarine and, like soybean oils and all of this stuff that was developed. It's just like, it was more for convenience.
And everyone says, cook like grandma. Well, grandma still used margarine and Crisco because she was told like that's better for you. And like you look at her old cookbooks and it's like, no, let's go back to butter. So it's like more like great grandma.
Great grandma.
Yeah.
And like that's the other thing is you can look at like if your grandma was of a certain age or is of a certain age, then they probably have recipes that they grew up on, and those are usually the better ones. But you still have to be careful, right? Like I actually have a cookbook, and I don't even know why, like where it came from. My mom had it, but it actually calls for lard in the recipes, and I'm like, oh, this is gold.
Yes. That's a keeper.
Yeah.
Keep that one. Yeah.
But
I know my grandmother, she is 80. She just turned 80. She's still working. She is having some health issues now, like with arthritis and stuff, but still working. But she smokes like, oh my word, you would have like if you got rid of that, like then she'd be done. Like smoking is her thing, but she's never been to the doctor. She's not on prescriptions. She eats real food, good food, and she's the one that I learned like how to make bone broth and don't waste that chicken carcass. Like she would have your hide if you threw like the ham bone away at like Easter dinner. She'd be digging it out of the trash. So like you don't waste anything. And so just that's like a testament. Yeah, she's smoking, but she's eating like how healthy would she be if she wasn't smoking,
Right.
So.
So kind of along those lines, I do love that you follow like the Weston A. Price kind of like mindset. And I don't know how many people really know about it. I've known about them for quite a few years, like since I was pregnant with my first baby. But that's kind of their thing is like they talk all about like eating whole foods, butter is great. Like,
Yeah.
So I do love that you kind of like share that stuff on your Instagram.
Yeah. And you think like, so would you mind if I share like the Weston A. Price, like who Weston Price was and stuff?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because at my classes I ask, and most people do not know.
Yeah, a lot of people don't
Price
know.
Was.
Yeah.
So Weston Price was a dentist in the 30s, and he was noticing a lot of like crowding of the teeth and the jawline in his patients and in children. And so he's like, what is happening? And so him and his wife set out for this, like, I don't even know how many years it was, but they studied all these indigenous cultures around the world. And they didn't have access to, processed foods. And we think in the 30s, like processed food, but that's like white sugar, flour, like those staple ingredients that we still use. So I'm like, oh my word, if he saw the processed food today. But they didn't have access to that, nor did they have access to like modern medical care. They had their medical, like their remedies and more of that ancestral way of like healing. And so what he found in each culture was they had these beautiful wide jaw lines. Women gave birth easy, beautiful teeth. He said they were scummy, but there was like no decay in them because they obviously didn't brush teeth and stuff.
Right.
And so each region, depending on where everyone was very rich in organ meat and high in fats, sprouted grains, if that was part of the region. And they always ate organ meat first, and they always gave it to the newlyweds for fertility. So
Mm-hmm.
the butter, the organ meats were always fed to the newlyweds for fertility. And then just he did another trip a couple like years later, and this is when most of these cultures were then introduced to modern foods, but no modern medical treatment. And what he found was a lot of decay, and their faces, like when you look at the pictures, they were in pain. There was a lot of emotional pain as well because they were
Mm-hmm.
hurting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it just goes to show you what these modern foods can do, like the seed oils and the
Mm-hmm.
highly processed grains that we're feeding our children first, right? We're feeding our
Right.
children rice cereal instead of
Right.
organ meat, egg yolks, avocados, those high in fat foods that are easily digestible.
Right.
Yeah. So Weston A. Price, then Sally Fallon brought all of his work back, and the foundation then is amazing. Like there's great podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
articles, and yeah. So my husband loves to listen to their podcast, and that's how I got
Mm-hmm.
him like kind of into the whole crunchy thing. Even though he grew up with his mom was super crunchy,
Mm-hmm.
and so I never have any issue like, hey, I'm going to this holistic doctor, or let's eat this, or let's do this. Like he does not deny. So yeah, so he's now listening to weirder podcasts than I do. So yeah.
Oh, I love it. Thank you for sharing that. I think that
Mhm.
was like a great summary of that what Weston A. Price did. But I was like when I heard, because I listened to the podcast too, and when they were talking about like the different jaws and the teeth and all of that, and like how it was affecting them in their birthing and everything, I was just like, holy cow! Like it was like mind blowing to me. But then you start seeing it, right? Like if you look at a lot of children in our modern times and compare them to like pictures of children, from the early
Mhm.
1900s, like they look different, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kids looked stronger, they looked tougher, they looked more resilient, and
Yeah.
it's probably a direct result of diet in a lot of ways. So it's pretty fascinating. But I do love what you're saying about how we should be reversing it with our children and like really focusing on the high fat, high protein type foods when they're little, and getting rid of these refined carbohydrates and sugars and all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. If I could go back, oh my word, I would change things. And I can't. So now it's like I want to just tell the mamas like if they're open, or if they ask me, I'm not one that'll just give like, oh, you need to feed your child liver. Like I'm not gonna just go to a mom and tell them
Right.
that. But if they ask. Um I do have a friend that she had twins naturally, and gave birth naturally. I'm like, oh my word, you go girl. And she's asking like, what should I feed my babies first? And so obviously I shared that. But um, I think like nutrition, like I was giving my children, the rice cereal. That's the first food you
Mm-hmm.
should give. That's what they say. And
Right.
obviously, right away, constipation and like all the digestive things going on. I'm like, what's going on? I'm giving her like suppositories to go to the bathroom. I'm like, there's something not right here.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't quite connect it then. But like the little yogurt puffs that are full of sugar, like you just like
Mm.
goldfish, all the things that are full
Oh
of
yeah.
the glyphosate that they like that the Roundup weed killer that they put on everything. I didn't know, and now I do. And we started changing things. And my children eat organ meat now. They love it. I try to normalize it, as I'm like, because I didn't grow up like that. But when you're eating a whole animal, and when you get a whole animal back from the butcher, you know, there's the heart, there's the tongue, there's the liver. And I'm like, hey, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
And so I had to find recipes, and I'm like dry heaving, like over the crock pot, like hoping they didn't see me, like, and just making it normal. We're going to have heart tonight. And now they love it. Or like tongue tacos. I'm like, who wants to peel the taste buds off? And my middle child loves like all the gross stuff. And she's like, I will. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But like, I just had to like turn my head and make it
Oh my
normal. And
gosh.
now they love it. And so it's like, I don't know if I still love it. I eat it because it's, you know, has a lot of nutritional benefits to it. I'm learning to love it and learning to find new recipes. But yeah, and with that being said, making those small changes, I don't know if it is those small changes, but my oldest daughter, like I had to have braces growing up, I had braces. Most children do these, and they're starting them younger and younger. She's 15 and her teeth are like, it looks like she had braces. And someone asked her the other day, oh, when did you get your braces off? Someone that hadn't seen her for a while. And she's like, I never had braces, and it's like, wow, is it those small changes that we made early on that affected that?
Yeah.
Or is it just good, I don't know, good genetics? I don't know. Cause then my other two children, they have, I see their teeth coming in and I tell mamas like, just wait. Their jaws are still developing.
Right.
Just wait. I don't know. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love it. I think that's so cool that they're totally all about the organ meats and the tongue and stuff.
Tongue tacos. They always ask me for tongue tacos. And I was like, that's just a specialty thing. I don't know. Do you guys eat any of that stuff? Or
I haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
My husband won't eat it, but I'm still trying to get just myself on board with that. I'm still just like, oh, there's lots of other good parts of that cow I would rather eat.
I know.
Well, I think it is. Kind of going along with what you're saying. When you introduce them young, it's just like a part of their life, and they don't really know
it's not a big
any
deal.
different. And so, it's kind of like, I've heard of people eating like brain tacos and stuff. It's just like not a thing, and it's like they don't think twice about it. One way that we kind of relate is like we hunt, and so we eat wild game a lot. So my kids eat deer and elk, and they don't bat an eye over that. It's like they don't taste any different. They think it's steak is steak. Like it's no different to them. But like there are adults I know that are like, I can't eat this. Like it tastes gamey, and it's just deer. But it's just like, I think it's so much of it is like a mindset thing, right? And it's just like you're saying, like, thank you for being real with that, because I'm like, man, I think I have a struggle.
Yeah.
But I loved your reel where you were making tongue jerky. Was that what you were making?
Oh, we made heart jerky.
Heart jerky.
Beef heart jerky. Because I don't know. I was just trying to think of a way to use it up. Because people know that we eat organ meat, so they will gladly give us the organ meats from the animals that they butcher. So I have a whole freezer of liver and some hearts. And then we also hunt, my girls hunt. And so, we just have all those organ meats. So I was just trying to get creative with it. And that actually turned out really good. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't know. Yeah.
Have you tried, and maybe you did this more early on, but like, did you ever like kind of like mix it in with other things? Like, so like, for example, my mom will do like Thanksgiving stuffing, and she'll like boil the, innards, and then she'll like mix it in with the stuffing. And so like you're eating organ meats, but you don't know it.
Yes. Yeah. That's how my grandmother would make, she made sage filling every Christmas, and it was like a stuffing, with liver. And so she would cook the liver, like little pieces of liver, like cut it up real fine, and then just put it in with the stuffing. And I grew up eating that. I didn't even know it, but tell me as a teenager, I'd be like, oh, gross, but
yeah.
Or just grinding up the heart and the tongue. Like, this is what you can ask your butcher. I just had an interview with our butcher last week for his podcast, and we talked about ancestral blend beef. And so what he's doing now is offering to add the heart, liver, and tongue to the ground beef. So you take that organs and you take that one cow, and so it's a perfect ratio, and you just combine it in, and you don't have to deal with it. You don't even know it's there. It's actually super good. My husband was like, is there bacon in this burger? And I was like, no, it's all the organs. And then you don't have to do it, or you can, if you want to, you could add your liver into your burger, but there's other companies that do that now. I think like Eat Nose to Tail, Brian Sanders, and the people that ship that too. So yeah.
Awesome.
That's such a good idea. Well, and we kind of already touched on this, why you think it's important to learn how to grow and raise and cook more healthy, nourishing foods. We've talked about the kids, but I think we also see it as adults. Like you mentioned, fertility. I know, like, as kids of the 90s, growing up through the 90s, like, processed food was just like a food group, like a staple, like cereal and like
Pop-Tarts,
sugary drinks, Kool-Aid,
yes. Gatorade,
Chips Ahoy cookies, all the things.
Yeah.
Yes, Gushers. Yeah. And so
Gushers.
I think it's just like a learning process. Like for me personally, I'm seeing the after effects of I'm contributing it to eating habits all growing up, but I'm seeing the effects of like hormone issues and different things like that in my 30s. And I think it's just, we're realizing it now and trying to make a change for our kids, hoping, kind of to reverse all of that for them, to make their later lives better and hopefully instill these things in them. But for someone, like, what advice would you give someone who's wanting to dive into more of a natural lifestyle? Like you talked about, like brand new wife or new mom, they don't know much about homesteading. What are some easy things that they can do to get started? Like, what would be like if I were to go back and do it all over and I was a newbie and didn't know anything, here's what I would tell you to do to get started.
Oh, okay. A newbie. Cereal. Cut the cereal. That's your first food of the day. Like, I just think about the cereal that I ate growing up and I was like, my mom let me eat that, and the Pop-Tarts and the toaster strudels. Like, my children ask me all the time, like, what is like the worst foods that you ever ate? And I would tell them, or, and they're like, oh, can we get the toaster strudels? And I was like, no, I'm not buying those things. But like,
Talia and I, we were just talking about this before you hopped on about cereal, and I'm like, it is trash. It is awful. But it's like sometimes you just want to bowl at like 10:30 at night.
It's like, because it's like so.
Why is it?
It's like so addictive. I swear.
Yeah.
It's because it's like addictive.
Yeah. Even the crunchy, like natural stuff is still.
Yeah.
I think there was a study done by Weston A. Price Foundation. Or was it, or through them, they shared it, but rats like died first on that. They ate over the cardboard.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, wow, okay, over cardboard. They died first on the cereal, the sugary cereal. But yeah, I would say get rid of the cereal and cook like a high protein breakfast, like eggs, even if it's not high protein. Like this morning, we always do like a waffle day, like one day out of the week, there's waffles or pancakes. I don't love it because of the maple syrup. Like, we use the real maple syrup, but it's still sugar is sugar.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah. And I tell that to a lot of people that are like, how do you start transitioning your children over to eating healthier? And I always say, start with breakfast. You'll notice a behavior change. You'll notice, just a better temperament in them when you start their day better with, like quiche. And I want to do this in May. I know this will air a different time, but like, I want to do a breakfast challenge just for 2 weeks. And I encourage anyone to do this, like 2 weeks, even a week. If you can't do 2 weeks, do a week. Like, don't eat the cereal, don't eat the donuts, don't eat the Pop-Tarts, eat eggs, eat some kind of like meat, like protein, bacon, sausage, make a quiche, make a breakfast bake. If you're like on the go, make some hard boiled eggs, or breakfast sandwiches. You can have the carbs. It just don't eat the cereal,
Right.
So yeah. Just because there's so many additives, and it's just that perfect combination of sweet and crunchy, and it just keeps you coming back.
Yeah. So I'm going to touch on your past teaching experience, but did you ever have those kids in your class where you'd be like, I know what you had for breakfast this morning?
Oh yeah. Well, actually, I taught in the city, so they all got free breakfast.
Oh,
and I saw that breakfast that they were getting, and I was like, this is not. It was the cereal. It was the there would be fruit, but they wouldn't eat the fruit. Like, some of them would, but and their lunches. I saw their lunches, and they were horrible. Like, I was like, it looks like dog food. Like, it was, and it smelled like, because we had to do lunch duty. I was like, this is not healthy. Or I would see the children that they would bring snacks too. I mean, most children will bring snacks school, but like, yeah, I was like, no, this stuff is not good. And then around holidays when all the sugar, the
All
aftermath.
the
Oh my
parties.
goodness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually used to be a teacher as well. And
Okay.
so I taught kindergarten for several years. And so it was just like there were some days where I was like, and I would ask them because like I already knew, but I'd be like, what did you have for breakfast today? And they're like, I had some Fruit Loops. I'm like, yeah, I can tell. So
All the food
anytime
dye. Yeah.
yeah,
All that red
anytime
dye. Yeah.
anytime they would have like if we had like a test or like we also did like little singing performances, so I'd be like, okay, make sure you have a really good breakfast, eat that bacon, eat that sausage and some eggs, it's good for your brain.
Yes.
It's just like
Yes.
keep you a little bit more even throughout the
I
morning.
know. Yeah. Oh, I know. Please do me a favor. Do all teachers a favor. Feed your children good food. But now I know, like I say then like that, all the students that I taught had breakfast at school. That wasn't very common around us. And now, but you see it more now because that was what, oh my word, I'm dating myself, 12 years ago, since I stopped teaching. And now more and more schools are offering breakfast. And I know moms, that are working, that's just like easier. Like, I'm just going to get the breakfast at school. I know it's not good. I know my sister tells me that. She's like, I know it's not good, but her husband's out the door, she's out the door, and it's just easier.
Right.
So I don't know, maybe, do it on the weekends, eat those good breakfasts, pack your children full of like nutrition.
Right.
Yeah. So,
well, and I mean, like when I was growing up, we had the cereal during the week because my mom worked and she was trying to get us all out the door, right? But she would make us like a from scratch breakfast on Saturday and Sunday, and then the rest of the meals. I mean, she always cooked for us, like always cooked dinner and stuff. But usually the weeknight dinners were like the frozen meals or things that were convenient and quick, right? But then like Sunday dinner, we'd have like a big from scratch type dinner. So, I mean, I think it's important to mention just like don't strive for perfection right off the bat because it can be so overwhelming. Like I've been in this space sometimes where I'm like, why even try? Everything's bad for you.
I know.
But I have to like talk myself down and just be like, you know what? Like they had candy today. It's going to be okay. Just try better tomorrow. And like, let's just keep the trajectory, like moving forward, like try not to, cause we don't like buy candy just to like have. It's usually just, like
we just had Easter and it just happens. It just like happens.
It is right. And it's like I say, like you have family members that don't live the same way and aren't aware of these things. And so like you kind of you can't be a perfectionist about it. You just have to like keep moving forward and do your best. So,
yeah.
Well, just like you said, there are other alternative options. Like you said, a waffle day. Like for us, we love pancakes, but we have found, I don't know if you've ever had Kodiak cakes, but we love that. And it's protein based. And we've switched over a couple years ago and my kids are so used to it now. Any other pancake mix they hate, they love Kodiak cakes now. So it's just, I think too, it's kind of training them as well. It's not easy at first, but when they get used to the good stuff and they go back to the bad, they're like, oh, like this makes me feel bad. And I don't like that as much. Or I think it's also rewiring and training their brains too, because that brain gut communication is crucial.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well said. I think knowing like, oh, my one daughter, like she got sick on Italian ice, like the red Italian ice. My husband took them to Rita's and he dropped me off to do a little shopping for like, I think it was Easter one year, and she got sick. And so now she knows like, oh, all the food dye does not make her feel good. So yeah, I think we have to give them that space instead of us saying, you can't have this because it's bad for you. Have the conversation. We always say, what's my job? And they always say, to keep us safe and healthy. And we're like, okay, this food isn't, we don't see this food as being very healthy. And so, what you put in your body is a choice to make you feel good, healthy, strong, so that you can, play and run and do all those things as a child can. And So yeah, help them, make the decision and understand the why. But yeah, I think there was something else I was going to say on that, but I digress. I guess we'll come back to it. But yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. I grew up like my mom did start working part-time, and yeah, so it was like half homemade and then half was like the Salisbury steak or the veal Parmesan that you just pop in the oven.
Mhm.
Um, and we did have it was a balance, and we
Yeah.
can have that, right? Like, yes, I love summertime where we can just get a pack of hot dogs and roast some hot dogs on the campfire and have s'mores. And I think like last night I didn't get dinner out in time. And so my girls ate leftover dessert from Easter dinner. And, uh, and I can't feel guilty about it because the rest of the time we are doing the best that we can. And I always say it's
Yeah.
like 80-20.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
don't strive for perfection or because stress isn't good for us either. So
Right. Yeah.
the best you can.
Yeah, I think that's really good. So what are some skills that you think that every homesteader or homemaker should have?
More than one?
As many as you think.
Yeah, I think if you're a homesteader or a homemaker, you're probably most likely already like cooking from scratch, right? You're in tune and you're starting to cook from scratch. Like that's number one, like just cooking from scratch. But
Mhm.
I think as a homesteader, homemaker, more and more people, let's just say homesteaders are raising their own animals, right?
Mhm.
Or sourcing animals from a farmer. And so that
Mhm.
means you're getting the whole animal back, right? Or a homemaker. I know many families, I love hearing from followers. I just ordered my first quarter of a cow and I'm stocking my freezer. They say,
Mhm.
I didn't think it was possible. Like when I see you doing what you're doing, I just didn't see it to be possible. But now I am, and I'm making those little steps. And so that you're getting the whole animal back. And a lot of times you're getting many different cuts of meat, right? Or you're getting a whole chicken rather than the parts of a chicken, right? And so that was a transition where I was like, okay, we're raising our own birds. But I would go to the store and buy chicken breast, boneless, skinless chicken breast, because that's what I was used to. And I was
Right.
like, for certain recipes. And so I had to get used to cooking the whole animal, cooking different cuts of meat, and then
Mhm.
also being able to use the organ meat, like we talked about earlier, like just getting comfortable with it because we get down to the end of our supply of meat. And I'd be going to the grocery store. And my husband's like, "Oh no, there's still meat in there." I'm like, "Yeah, it's
Yep.
the heart and the organs. I don't want to cook that." So that's what kind of like made me have to do that because it's a waste. And
Right.
ancestrally, like our ancestors wasted nothing. And
Mhm.
so, and that is like you are taking a life. And so I think we've just really we have that disconnect between
Mhm.
the animal and what we're eating. And so we need to get comfortable with eating the entire animal.
Yeah.
If we are going to take that life and
Mhm.
put it, it's going to be in our freezer, we're going to be using it. We have to get comfortable with it. So yeah, I would say that like just, and maybe even being like comfortable processing your own animals because as a
Yeah.
hunter, I don't like to think doomsday or anything. Like I truly like homestead because I love it. There came a time in 2020 when, obviously the world shut down and you really had to think about your food sources. And then it became more of like a scarcity mindset of like, oh my word, I'm going to do this because I have to. And
Yeah.
we don't have to at this point. We still get to do it and enjoy it and love it. We're just a little more conscious of like tightening our food chain, right? Our food supply. But I think like, okay, well, if I did have to hunt, my family, my husband and my three girls, they hunt, but like that deer that they're bringing home, what if, you know, there are no butchers around us? What if you have to do it yourself?
Mhm.
Like just getting comfortable
Yeah.
doing it. Like there for a while, we raised and butchered our own pigs, but we noticed a lot was going to waste, but we just wanted to learn. And so,
Right.
just knowing like, you don't have to do everything. I just feel like, like we had a dairy cow for a little while. I just wanted to learn. I just wanted to do it.
Right.
And now I'm like, okay, I don't need that because I have raw milk everywhere around us. So it's not really practical, but just, I think those skills, getting comfortable with using all of the animal.
Mhm.
And don't be scared to just try different things. Even if you don't have to use that skill, it's just great to know. And like, because there's nothing like just the education of real life and
Right.
putting your hands to it. Because
Mhm.
yes, we can learn on Instagram, we can learn on YouTube, we can learn from all all the places, but real education comes from actually doing.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
that was a
I
long
think that's
answer.
in that vein.
no, I think it's so
Yeah.
perfect. I mean, I totally get it because, you know, we hunt, we actually stopped taking our stuff to a butcher because my husband's like, I don't know, I killed it, I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah.
So he takes care of it and he doesn't waste. I mean, if there is a shred of meat on a bone, he will get that meat off. And it's like, maybe we can't use it for steaks, but we can put it in the jerky bag and we can make it into jerky, or, you know, we can make dog food out of it if it's like really like rough, you know, but there's just so many different things. And I do think there is, I mean, because coming from like more of like the going to the store and buying your food and then shifting to like processing your own animals, because we've done like meat chickens, too. And so like I butchered all of those and my husband helped, you know, we both did it together. And so, you kind of, you know, when you have like 10 whole chickens in the freezer, it's like, well, yeah, you're not going to be making like, you know, like orange chicken with like those whole chickens every night, because you're going to, you know, you're going to only have so many of the breasts, and then you have to figure out what you're going to do with the other parts of the animal. And it's just like all the parts of the deer or the elk or whatever. And I find that a lot of people kind of, they get stuck because they're like, well, I don't know how to cut like all of the cuts of this and that. Like, I don't know how to get this like roast or this type of steak out of the deer. And it's like, just cut it up. Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's just meat. Like, just cut it up, put it in, you know, your bag and put it in the freezer and you'll figure out how to use it. I mean, I love it because I feel like, especially like whole animals like elk and deer, it's like you can do so much if you just have the meat in the freezer.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it does require like a little bit of creativity to figure out how you're going to utilize everything and not let things go to waste. So,
yeah. Yeah. Like I just learned how to spatchcock a chicken. Like because I just always cooked a chicken whole. And I'm like,
yeah.
I've never spatchcocked. I mean, it's the simplest thing, right? Just cutting out that like backbone. It was not pretty. I think I even shared it on Instagram and I had quite a few comments. Like, I need to get a better like kitchen shears. I was just using a knife and it was not pretty, but I did it. And
Yeah.
now it's one of our favorite ways. It cooks really quick and really easy. And it just I feel like it tastes better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
So in that vein, what inspired you to share your knowledge with the world? Because I feel like you do such a good job on not only your website, but also Instagram, especially with your content and just educating people. So is that something that, you know, you grew up around this, so this stuff was normal to you and you had been taught this, but what inspired you to share your knowledge with other people?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because like I said, when we started, there was no like Instagram, there was blogs, and Facebook, but our friends were asking us, they would come over and they'd be like, what are you doing now? What are you learning now? And, you know, I'd have wine going in the kitchen. We'd have, you know, our meat birds and, you know, all the things. And so they were always asking us what we were doing because they weren't raised that way. And so that spurred me on to just teach, like, just want to like teach people. And so then I desired, because I was learning, my husband and I were learning from books and YouTube, and just that trial and error. And I longed for, well, you had the Mennonite and Amish community and they stuck together. And so I didn't have that you know, and I was longing for like just another woman to sit down with and like, you know, snap green beans or can peaches, you know, and or someone to sit down and like teach me their ways, like have that conversation. And so that just really spurred me on to start teaching in-person classes when we moved to this farm. I instantly like saw our barn, like, oh, I want to teach classes out of the barn and canning classes. And so we renovated our garage in the meantime, so that I could teach classes out there, because I was doing it around my kitchen table. And that's what we call folk school. And And I was doing it around the dining room table, and I would always have to kick my family out. Like, okay, everyone leave because people are coming over, and make sure the kitchen's clean and like everything's clean. And so now it's like we have that separate space, but I still feel like when people come here for a class, they're all over my house. Like we're in the kitchen, we're out on the farm, we're, if it's depending on the season, we're up in the garden, we're, sometimes classes right outside if we're doing a canning class. And then just naturally happened. Like I started a little blog. I think it was called the Farmhand Homestead, the Farmhand. Cause I always considered myself the farmhand because I would just always help my husband. Like we were just a team. And, and then I think I've had like 3 or 4 websites, probably 4, like different versions, and started off with blogging and then like sharing on Facebook. And then obviously Instagram came along and trying to navigate that. And that's a whole nother job. I feel like Instagram, social media it's hard work. And so when you see people with the following and all of that, like it is blood, sweat, and tears, like just trying to come up with content that sticks and that is valuable, that has, and with the algorithms and all that. And so sometimes I can get like a little discouraged. Sometimes I'm like, I feel like I've just been like, I made this reel or I made this educational content and are people seeing it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just have to keep that in the forefront. Like always, like, it's not about like just having the views. It's not about the numbers of followers. It's not about that. It comes down to offering valuable education that is going to help people, make one small change in their life.
Yeah.
And that's why I like that declutter challenge, because clutter creates headspace, right? Out of sight, out of mind is not a correct saying. You have to open that game cabinet. You have to open that, silverware drawer how many times a day, and things just don't look good, or like there's just random things that just they're like, oh, I need to get to that. Oh, I need to get to that. And so, yeah, those little small changes in our life, and that's what I just hope to instill and help. Maybe just leave that little impact in other people's lives.
So tell us a little bit more about folk school. I mean, you've been telling us about it, but kind of like give everyone kind of like a breakdown of like your classes that you offer, how often, kind of like what the experience is like for people.
Yeah. So classes are seasonal, and there's a larger folk school. There's actually a few folk schools around the country that I didn't really realize until I started this, and I was like, oh, because our name is Well Folk Revival. And I was like, okay, we're going to call it folk school. Like my husband always says, we don't farm animals, which we do, but like not large scale. He's like, we farm people. We teach people these skills because we don't have enough space to like raise food for people, but we can teach them. And that's what like the Bible and to fish and, instead of like feeding them, like teach them how to fish. So that's kind of our principle, is like teaching people and equipping people. So our classes are small. They're about, I think I can host, depending on the style of class. If it's a hands-on class, it's like 6 to 8 people around the table. And that's like sourdough classes. So like it's hands-on. It's not just like educational seminars. Some things are, but it's more like seasonal. So I just released all of our seasonal classes for the spring and early summer. And it's cultured dairy. So a little bit of cheese making, but more like yogurt, kefir, making ricotta cheese, mozzarella cheese, like how to do that at home. Kombucha making, medicinal remedies that you can do like easily, like just the basics. Chicken butchering. What are the other ones? I think that's it. Yeah. So no bread making this season. Even though I have the people are like, can you still do sourdough? I'm like, well, we're coming into those warmer months where it's like gardening and canning and fermenting. So things are seasonal. And so I do teach like 1 or 2 classes a month. There was that first summer I started, which was about 6 years ago. And I had a class every single weekend. I was so burnt out by the end of summer. My family was burnt out. And I was like, okay, this isn't a full-time business. This is something I get to do, while I'm home with my children, and I can have a few classes a month. So I would love to bring in more teachers. And I do have a few teachers that, hey, can you come and teach pressure canning? Because I still am scared to death of that pressure canner. I don't know. I need to learn how to do it. I know how to do it. It just, I don't know. There's
It's
just some things
intimidating.
that it is. Yeah. Like even my Instant Pot, I still am like, when that little like thing goes up and I'm like, is it okay? Like,
Yep.
you know, like, I don't know.
Like, make sure there's no more pressure.
Yes. So yeah. And then, yeah, I had another bread baker came in. She taught a gluten-free sourdough class because that was like a highly suggested class. Like people wanted to know like how to make gluten-free sourdough bread. And I was like, well, I don't make that. So I had someone come in. And then I have people that are long distance. I have people that'll travel in from New Jersey, Delaware, New York, like the tri-state area, even Virginia, to take classes. They'll stay for the weekend because we are in a pretty touristy town. Our whole county is pretty touristy. And so, but like people that are long distance, so like, can you broadcast this? Can you like make this virtual? So I created something called the Greenhouse, which is a membership area that I just teach each of these skills, like one skill a month. And that was really just to quiet the noise of social media so that people can go to one place, learn from one video and, you know, and get the recipes. Because like that's at folk school, you get that small town feel. You gather around a table, you get to meet new people, like people like share their Instagram handles. Some people like get on a group chat so they can, you know, keep in touch and share ideas with sourdough or whatever.
Oh, I love that.
So yeah, it just, it feels old fashioned, you know, that thing that I was longing for, and I could cry. Like that thing that I was longing for, like you just create, right? Yeah. So there's something you're longing for, just create it, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think with COVID too, everything went virtual. So it's almost like people are longing for that in-person connection again. Like it's almost like everything is virtual, everything is on social, and we miss out on that in-person time and connecting with one another in person. And so I love that you offer in-person classes. And I'm someone who can get overwhelmed. Like I love your greenhouse with just like one skill. I love that because I can get overwhelmed very easy with information overload, and I learn better that way. And I also learn better in person, visually, hands-on. So I think that's such a treat for people to be able to come and learn from you.
Yeah. And I think that's like, I do have people that come to class that have made sourdough, but they have, you know, something went wrong or they have questions that they want to ask the question right away. They don't want to have to ask it in a YouTube comment, you know, or a message or an email. They want to get the answer right away because we're busy, you know, we're juggling different things. And so when you commit to something and you commit that time to it, then you're more prone to like, okay, I'm going to do this, you know, I'm going to dive in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And it's also helpful too. Like when you have someone that's like seriously looking over your shoulder, looking at what you're doing, and you can ask them, just be like, does this look right? Like, am I doing it okay? Is this right? Exactly. And then it's like, oh yeah, you're fine. And it's like, okay, cool. Like that in itself, it's like huge because, you know, you can watch all the videos, like you said before, you can watch all the videos, but like sometimes you just need to like have someone just like watching you and just letting you know that you're doing good. Or like I struggle with like kneading sourdough, like just like, you know, making sure I'm doing it right. I'm like, oh, it's a questioning. I'm like, is this the right texture? Is this like, because I can watch a million videos, but like with my own dough, I'm like, I don't know what that feels like. I don't know if it's like, if I'm even on the right path. So I think that's really helpful that people can actually come in person and experience it.
I want to be one of those, like, raise my hand, like, teacher, will you come help me?
Yeah. And I think that's just, so like, I just like, okay, so the Lord took me in a different path, you know, like I always longed to be, just home with my babies, barefoot in the kitchen, you know, all of that. But growing up, like I just knew like work, you know, you work and you go to college and you get a good job. That's what I've always taught. So like, you know, okay, I'll go to college and I'll be a teacher because I love children and it'll give me the summers off so I can be a mom still. Right.
Yeah.
But I look back and I'm like, okay, he wove those paths together, you know, and like, I don't think like that education, you know, it was a wasted education. And, you know, so I'm still using that career, but like teaching adults, which is, I think, so much better. I don't know. I love the children. Like I was kindergarten as well. I went out with a bang. Kindergarten. I was first grade and second grade, and it was a blast, but it was hard work. And teaching adults and even older children is just so much fun. So fun.
Yeah. Plus, you do homeschool your kids too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think that is one thing, because sometimes I'm like, man, like, did I do all that for nothing? But then I'm like, no, like, you got to teach all those kids so that you could teach your own kids, like you would have confidence teaching your own kids. So I'm like, I do love how God will do those things in our lives.
Yeah. And I feel, I don't know about you, but I do feel like I had to unschool myself for a little bit in order to homeschool my children.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a different mindset for sure.
Because they were public school for a little while, and then COVID happened, and they were asking to come home. And I was like, all right, I hear you loud and clear. We're coming home. So, and we have our moments. Like usually February. I think we've been doing this for 4 years. Every February, I'm like, you're going back to school, or we're looking for another option.
The worst. It is the worst.
So I have to make note, because now this is my 4th year. And I'm like, okay, I have to make note every February. They're all at each other. They need some separation. It's not that they need to go back to school. We just need a change of scenery, and they need to do more things.
Get outside.
Yeah.
So you go outside.
Yes. So we usually go to cafes, and we'll do school in a cafe or meet up with friends. Fridays are like Friend Friday. And
That's so fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like we have talked about so many good things. Is there anything else you wanted to share with our audience before we move on to our rapid fire questions?
I don't think so. I think let's get to those questions. I think we'll have some fun with that. I appreciate you, ladies. And this was a fun conversation. Don't make them too hard. Those questions.
Okay.
They're fun.
Well, there's only 10 of them. So, question number 1, what are you reading right now?
I don't read. I don't read. I don't have the mind space. Like, okay, so every morning I will read my Bible. Like, that's probably the only thing I really read. But
okay, that works. Well, that's most important. So
yeah.
Well,
I listen to Audible, but nothing that I'm listening to right now. So
okay.
All right. What is your favorite part of being a homesteader?
The full circle, seeing the full circle of life, embracing every season.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
What's one thing that you have on your bucket list? It can be anything.
I want to go to Italy. I want to go and do like a food tour of Italy and make pasta with the old grannies.
Yeah.
I want to do that too.
Drink good wine and eat really good food. So yeah.
Like Italian folk school.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see. What is your favorite steak cut and how do you like it cooked?
Ooh. I would say either like Delmonico or like New York strip. I don't know. Just give me steak, like something like fatty and cooked medium rare. Yeah.
Yes. Steak all around.
Since we are the Paintbrush Prairie, we ask, what is your favorite wildflower? Or it could be something native to you in Pennsylvania.
The little daisies that pop up in June when we go hiking. I collect them and then I bring them home and dry them. Like I press them in, flower press. But yeah, I was just planting all of my cut flower garden seeds before we got to our conversation today this morning. So flowers are my thing.
Awesome.
I love how you've incorporated them into your branding too. I love it.
Yes,
it's so pretty.
I think the flower garden is my favorite thing on our homestead.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's become mine as well. I started last year and I'm addicted. Like it just brings me so much joy. It's so happy. I love having fresh flowers in our house every day in the summer.
Yes.
It's like such a simple joy.
Yeah. And bringing joy to others. I've had so many friends that are like, are you doing that cut flower garden again? Because anytime people would visit or folk school members, I would just like, here's scissors, here's a rubber band, go cut flowers before you leave. And like, everyone loves it, you know?
Oh,
so
that's so fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Log cabin or old farmhouse?
Dang. Okay, old farmhouse. But I just also dream of just living in the middle of nowhere in the mountains.
Yeah.
And like an old rustic cabin.
Yes.
So do you ever think of like, if I could do, you know, if I could just have not a do-over, but like, what would I do in my next phase of life? Maybe that, like in my next phase of life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I love my farmhouse, but I don't know, rustic cabin too. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your favorite recipe or meal to make?
Okay. Recently, I have been making this tortellini, and I posted the recipe on Instagram, but it's so easy because I have canned tomato sauce downstairs. So it's like a creamy tomato soup with hot Italian sausage, spinach, and tortellinis, and a jar of pesto. So it is so easy. It's like just dumping everything in. Super easy. Yeah.
That sounds really good. Now I'm really hungry.
I know, it's lunchtime.
Go get the recipe on Instagram.
Yes. All right. Have you ever had an animal that had a big impact on your life or was particularly memorable?
So I've had lots of animals.
Sometimes it's hard to pick.
Yeah, I think. So I grew up with the elk on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like either the elk, just having growing up with them, they were just so amazing, and watching them like shed their antlers and going and hunting for their antlers then. So as far as like, wild animals, but I did grow up, my aunt had a horse when I lived on the farm, and she would just let me ride, like just go. And I was maybe, I don't know, 6, 7. And she would just let me go ride her horse without any adult supervision. And I felt so like independent. But then like I stopped riding, and I'm like, how did I lose that? I go back to that like childhood, like that childlike faith of like, okay, I'm just going to go riding. And now like to get on a horse and like, oh my, all the fears that like,
right.
Well, what could happen? This could happen. And so I don't know. I think that was impactful.
Okay. Share one random fact about you.
Okay. It's kind of weird and odd, but like I have, and I'm always like self-conscious about this when I'm making reels. So now everyone's probably like, don't look at my reels, but like, don't look too close. But I have this like, okay, so I grew up loving, were you born in the 80s or 90s?
90s.
Early 90s.
Early 90s. Okay. But I'm sure you probably remember jelly shoes. Do you remember jelly shoes?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I love those. Love those.
Yes. Every spring, like my birthday's in May. So I always got jelly shoes for my birthday, and I loved it. And I had like the widest, fattest little feet, or I did. And so like I would scrunch my feet into those, like they are gonna fit. and like to this day, my mom's like, you have like, I have a little pinky toe that like crosses over the other one, it like hugs it, and it just doesn't lay flat. Like both of them do. And my mom's like, I think it's because the jelly feet, like the jelly shoes, made you like have like this like pinky, like your little pinky toe. And I remember teaching too, and all the like, because you know the kindergartners are all like down at like foot level, and they're like, what's wrong with your foot, your feet? So that's like my one random like thing that I just don't love about my feet, and that's like a random thing. So yeah,
I think a lot of people have that though.
Yeah,
like more people than you realize have like the little curved toes that do funny things. So
I don't know, but it's all because of those jelly shoes. That's why.
Now I'm gonna just always see jelly shoes.
Yeah, she's like, you were born with like the most perfect feet and I was like, okay, well, anyway. Don't know.
You know what though? I could actually kind of believe it because I also am someone who has really wide feet, and just
Yeah, me too.
man, shoes were always so restrictive. It's probably why I don't wear shoes, because I just have wide feet and I just don't like them.
Yeah.
But that's normal. That's actually
shoes.
healthy. That's healthy
Right.
to have nice wide feet. But yeah, I don't wear shoes either. I'm always barefoot. So yeah. But I do love my cowboy boots. So that's always like a tough decision. Like cowboy boots or bare feet. What do I do? Outside.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of most cowboy boots now is like they're all wide, square toe.
Yeah.
Square toe.
So it's like like I love when that started to be like more like fashionable, I guess. And I like started buying the square toe because I was like, finally, like comfortable
Comfort.
cowboy boots.
Yes.
All right. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being with us today. We just loved having you on. You are such a joy to talk to. So will you please tell us how people can find you? Give us like your handles, your website. Tell us where people can reach you.
Sure. And I appreciate you ladies having me on too. So thank you for that. It was enjoyable chatting with you, getting to know you ladies a little bit more. All my socials are the same. So Wellfolk Revival on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And then my website where everything is housed is wellfolkrevival.com.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much.
Thank you.
This is such a great conversation, and I hope our listeners will go check you out, maybe sign up for greenhouse, and
yeah. And if anyone's local, come gather around the table anytime you're in Pennsylvania.
Yes, I don't know. I was actually going to ask you, do people come and fly out? Like, do they come and make it a trip?
No, I've never had anyone fly in. So just travel in
maybe
from other
I will.
states. Yeah.
Maybe we can make that happen.
Yeah. Our county is so cute, very rich in like the Amish and Mennonite culture. But also like Lancaster County they consider like a little Manhattan. It's just really rich in art and a lot of things to do downtown.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys all go and check out all of her fun stuff that she offers and maybe make it out to one of her in-person classes. So with that, we will end our episode, but thank you again, Sarah.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.